Then the next thing I remember, I was in the hospital. And so what happened was, from what I was told, because I still to this day I can't remember what happened, is that like the car ran a stoplight and then we got T-boned. So all of a sudden we were T-boned. By the grace of God, Jaylen was not hurt at all. So he was not physically hurt at all. I broke my elbow, I fractured my eye socket, I had to get staples and stitches and replacement elbows and all that stuff. But unbeknownst to me at the time, I was in the hospital. Mike was in a coma.
Welcome back to an all-new episode of the Dare to Love podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Holloway, and you are watching Beauty from Ashes, where I have guests on to share how God brought them out of a terrible experience and turned it into something beautiful. Today's guest is Shemaiah Compton. She's going to be sharing her testimony on how God's faithfulness helped her get through the loss of a loved one. Hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so Shemaiah, just tell me a little bit about yourself and your life and what you do and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so my name is Shemaiah Youngblood Compton, and I am a teacher. I teach third grade in Hall County, and I am originally from Louisiana. I've been in Georgia for about 20 or so years now. But yeah, I'm enjoying, being here and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. When did you move to Georgia?
I moved to Georgia when I was 15.
Okay.
So yeah. My dad was actually a pastor. He started a church here. We came for a church plant, and he had that church for about 7 years or so before, he decided to do something else.
Yeah.
So that's what brought us here.
Oh, awesome. I didn't know you were PK.
Yeah, girl, yeah.
So just tell me kind of how, like I know you said you're a PK, but tell me about how you kind of got really involved in church and kind of like your walk with the Lord, how that got started for you.
Okay, so my grandfather is also a pastor too. So like I was raised like in the church. So growing up, my dad, when I was about maybe 8 or 9, he was on staff at one of the local churches in Louisiana. And since then, we were always in church. So that's Sundays, Wednesdays, Saturdays, classes, all that. And so I started being involved because I wanted to help with the kids. So even when I was like a kid, I wanted to help with the kids. So I'll start volunteering. And in middle school, I was really into, serving, and, we did small groups at the church that I was at. And so we had like kids small groups for the elementary school kids. And so I led that. And then, we ended up coming here to Atlanta, and I was still involved in the church, but it was different then because it was my dad's church. So a lot of his congregation were older people. And so I didn't really have a fit. So like in high school, I started to kind of like wander off a little bit, went to college, and then, totally was like, okay, I can do what I want now. I'm gonna do what I want. And I ended up getting pregnant, and I had my son when I was 18. But then I ended up going back to school. I finished my degree and ended up getting my master's degree as well. And like I said, so I'm teaching now elementary school with my master's degree. So God does work wonders. And with that also, when I was about 21 or so, that's when I really started going back deep into the Lord. I was like, I need to go to church, because even though like a lot of times we turn away from Christ, like we still have that in our insides, like that core foundation. So where like where your life comes from, where your joy comes from, where your faith comes from. And so like I kept feeling that pulling, like you need to go back, like you need to go back to church, like, and not just be in church, like really get a relationship with Christ. And so I got rebaptized. Pastor was doing like this big what do you say, like filled with water or something. And so I was just like, oh, I need to get rebaptized. I'm dedicating my life to the Lord. Like I'm going in. And so I got rebaptized, and I was just really involved in the church. I decided to join the choir. I was involved in young adults, and also started helping with Kid Pack as well. And that started because, I was doing some stuff for school, and I was like, oh, I like this. Like, I'm going to, continue to do this and, maybe help, just have a foundation for the kids so they can, start off strong with the Lord. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I met Shemaiah volunteering in kids' church, and I had like a similar thing. Like,
the foundation was laid for me when I was a little kid. So that's what drew me to volunteer with kids. It's like, you get to kind of play a part in that foundation being laid. But so you're involved in some different small groups and things like that. So tell me about how you met Mike and like how you started dating him and all that kind of stuff.
So after I had Jaylen, like I was single for a while, like because I always had a fear, like I'm a single mom, nobody wants to date me, because I got baggage, not so much house baggage, but how people like perceive it, right. And so I was, I would like different people, but I would still just be nervous, like, no. So I ended up meeting actually Cameron, a friend of ours at church. And I was like, oh, I noticed that you're in a small group. Can you tell me more about it? And so he began telling me more about it. And then Jaylen, my son, was in kids church and his teacher happened to be Vicky. And so I saw Vicky and I was like, hey, Cameron, right? And she was like, yeah. I was like, aren't y'all like in a small group or something together? And I was like, I want to join a small group, somebody like young adult age. Can you tell me more? And so they invited me to small group and I met Mike at small group. So like he was there and I would bring Jaylen sometimes, but I didn't really pay any attention to him because, I got Jaylen. And so we ended up having a small group get together where we went to a Gwinnett Braves game. So just like, relaxed atmosphere. And so I ended up sitting next to, two of the guys there. One of them was Mike. And so we kind of like had a little banter and, ended up getting each other's numbers and, we just kind of connected. And so we started texting and just chit chatting. And he finally asked me out and I was like, okay. And I was like, I have a kid, right? And he was like, yeah, I saw him. Been around you. I was like, okay, I'm just making sure you understand. Like, I do have a kid and that's that. And he was like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. You want to go out with me? And I was like, okay. And so, we went out on a couple of dates and, we connected. And then he was like, he was like, can I meet Jaylen? And I was like, for real? And he was like, yeah, can I meet him? And I was like, okay. And so, they met and like instant connection, like Jaylen loved him. Like when I said it was a love, Jaylen loved him so much. Like he knew, he was like, Mom, when's Mike coming? What time is he coming? Is he coming today? To where like he would write about him in his, in kindergarten. They would do like journals. And so he would write about like his weekend with Mike and like how much fun they had and like they do football and basketball together and all that. And so like there was, that connection. And so, as time went on, I started going to a different campus for my church. And so we ended up being closer to the house, but Mike would come and pick us up and we would all go to church together and I would serve in Kid Pack and he'll like wait on us, make sure we cut out safely, all that stuff. And then one of the Sunday morning, we were headed to church. And I remember us getting in the car and, we're all ready and we were driving down the street. And I was like, why'd you turn into this lane? Like, you never turned into this lane so early. And he was like, oh, I didn't want to have to move over later. And so then the next thing I remember, I was in the hospital. And so what happened was, from what I was told, because I still to this day I can't remember what happened, is that like the car ran a stoplight and then we got T-boned. So all of a sudden we were T-boned. By the grace of God, Jaylen was not hurt at all. So he was not physically hurt at all. I broke my elbow. I fractured my eye socket. I had to get staples and stitches and replacement elbows and all that stuff. But unbeknownst to me at the time, I was in the hospital. Mike was in a coma. He had to get jaws of life out of the car. And he, and I, during this time, like I didn't know. And I would ask my parents, like, where's Mike? How's he doing? Oh, he's still in the hospital. I'm like, okay, is he okay? Yeah, and they kind of brushed it off. And then I got out of the hospital and then I was like, why won't y'all let me talk to Mike? I was upset. I was like, why won't y'all let me talk to Mike? Like, what's happening? Like as I'm coming to, like, why? And they're like, well, he's still in the hospital. And I was like, well, can I go see him? They're like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, like just not processing, like, oh, he's probably really hurt, like just not processing that. And so they took me into his room and I saw it and I just started like crying. I was like, oh my gosh, like what happened? And then I remember like just grabbing his hand. I remember just start praying for him. I'm like, oh, you're going to be okay. Like God's got this, he's so many people before, he'll heal you too. And just knowing that like God's going to heal him, like it's fine, it's going to be okay. Well, a day or two later, my parents sit me down on the couch and they're like, we found out that last night Mike died. And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, I just saw him, like he's like, no way, like he cannot be. And I just got silent. I just kind of just like, I just felt heavy, like all over my body. And I just was so confused, like, God, why didn't you heal him? Like, everybody, like, you've healed other people. I've prayed. Why didn't you heal him? And I was just so broken. And from that time on, I was just like, why?
Yeah.
Like, why in the world would you take him away? Like, he loved me. He loved Jaylen. Like, we did everything. Like, we were dating. Like, we did the courting, like, to where, we weren't intimate or anything. Like, we were waiting. And, I knew he was going to be my husband. Like, everything was going toward that. I met his parents and his family. And, like, I was just like, I don't understand. Like, you were supposed to heal him. I prayed. Like, I had faith. And it didn't happen. And everything was just in shambles. And then, because of just life, like, I had to keep going as if, like, it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because I still have a kid. I still have to like raise my kid. I still have to go to work. I still have to like, do. And I was just broken on the inside. But something that was a constant was people kept pouring into me, like people that I didn't even think were Christian or like even had like faith. They would send me letters. They would send me cards. And in the cards, there would be scriptures, there would be like Ecclesiastes, there's a time for, sadness. There's a time for joy. And, they would be sending me all these scriptures. And I'm just like, I see this, but I don't believe this. Like, I can't. Because I did what God told me to do.
Mm-hmm.
I had the faith. I went to church. I served church. Like I did all this stuff, and then he still took away. Like, how could you? So I was just so angry, and it took a long time for me to really like understand like what was going on. It actually was. It's when it started to affect Jaylen. So like I said, Jaylen didn't have any physical, like he didn't break anything, no bruises, no scratches or anything, but he ended up acting out in school. So all of a sudden, like the next year in school, like he started like biting his teachers. He started like acting out. And so finally they were like, you need to go get him checked out or else he has to go to like a different school. And I'm like, okay. So we, went to go get him checked out and they're like, well, he has like post-traumatic stress disorder or whatever. And I'm like, what? And he was like, yeah, he's been in this accident and now he's finally processing and he's trying to get his emotions out and he's trying. I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh. And so we were at a summer camp VBS thing and they were at an aquarium and like Jaylen had a full on like, he was really upset. Like they could not calm him down. They had to call me. I had to go pick him up. And we ended up talking to the kid pastors and they were like, you need to go to counseling. And I'm like, why? I don't do counseling, crazy. And he was like, yeah, you need to go do counseling. And then we also have like grief share, through the church. Like, I feel like y'all need to go through that because, this pastor over here told me what happened. And like, we feel that like, there's just some things that he needs to get out and then you need to get out as well. And so we ended up going to counseling and then I ended up going to grief share and that actually helped tremendously. When I was in the grief share program, it was just basically reiterating the fact that God is God and God is omniscient and like God knows everything. So basically what we see is like a turn by turn in our lives. So we're like, okay, this is next. This is next. But God sees the bird's eye view. He sees where you're going, your full life. And so I had to learn basically like, even though you're here, like you're upset, you're grieving, you're crying, you're depressed, like this is not the end. And understanding that it was tough because I would leave and I would just cry like every week, like, oh my goodness. But in grief share as well, you also see other people. So from my perspective, I was like, God heals, he raises people from the dead and, he gives us life. But there are other people sitting around you who he didn't do that either. Like he didn't heal their kid. He didn't heal their husband who got shot. He didn't heal, so you're surrounded by other people who are dealing with those same things that you are. And it kind of gives you like a little peace, like, I'm not in this alone, and it's not just God's taking it out on me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. The scripture that I think of as you're talking is, I can't remember the exact verse, but it's in Job, and it's the Lord gives and the Lord takes away.
Yeah.
Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Yeah.
And it always has struck me as the ending, blessed be the name of the Lord. It's like, no matter what happens to you, like, you bless the Lord's name, you know, and that's just the obedience of being a Christ follower. Even when you have questions, you still bless his name. So how long did you and Mike date before this accident happened?
We were dating for about 9 months. It felt like longer because, you're in it. But we were dating for 9 months with the intent of, marriage. And, this is, setting our foundation and everything. Yeah. And for that to end, just literally out of nowhere was just so heartbreaking. And it was rough.
Right. So after you, going through grief share and counseling and things like that, how do you deal with having big faith for God to do something and then it not happen?
It was hard, but that's what faith is, though. Faith is, trusting even when you can't see. So there was that time to where I was like, God, I don't understand. Like, why did you do this? Why did you take him away? After we've done everything that you asked us to do, why did you take it away? And he did, I was like, why? And he still hasn't answered that. He still hasn't told me why he's done what he's done. He still hasn't fully shown me, what the purpose in his plan was. But with my faith, I have to trust that it's his plan. And so it's tough. And one thing about me, you probably don't know, is that my mom died when I was 10 months. So my dad had to go through kind of what I went through as well. So my mom died. She had an autoimmune disease called lupus. And so all of a sudden, she was outside and she got a throat infection. And because her immune system was so weak, she just, she died. Yeah. She woke up one morning, she felt sick, hospital, and then, she died. And so my dad had me and my brother, and he was left, by himself as well. But he got remarried to my stepmom, and I have a brother now as well. But I say that to say is that sometimes we ignore that. We ignore there is another side to this. We see, woe is me. It's just me happening to me. And I didn't even realize, well, Dad, that happened to you too. What did you do? And then me seeing him having his faith too. He had faith. He was like, God's going to give me a wife. I know that. He's not going to have y'all, I got 2 kids. I'm not going to do this by myself. And so having that faith too, just seeing both sides, sometimes God, he does heal, but sometimes he doesn't. But yet we still have life and we still move on, and there's still life to live, and there's still things that we have to do for his kingdom, even without, said person. Yeah. But so, yeah.
Yeah. I think the grieving process is so different for every person. Yeah. And I don't think it ever really ends. Mm-hmm. It gets a little bit maybe easier to go day by day. Yeah. But you don't ever really stop grieving someone. And I think the hardest part, what I've experienced, is when people reach out to you right after it happens. Mm-hmm. They're like, if there's anything I can do for you, let me know. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't even know what to let you know that I need.
Yeah.
To text you back to say oh, I need this. I don't have the thoughts to say that, you know? So going through my own grief with my grandfather, mm-hmm. It put that a lot into perspective for me, because it's now when I see somebody else go through grief, mm-hmm. I'm like, all right, can he bring you a meal? I'm more specific with what I am asking for them, because when he died, it was I just remember, this is probably TMI, but I remember at the end of the day after he died, realized I hadn't gone to the bathroom all day.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about it because I was just in like shell shock.
Yeah.
You know? And it's kind of like you have all these people like texting you, you know, if you need anything. It's like I couldn't even go to the bathroom by myself, like without thinking about it.
Yeah.
The day that he died. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the perspective that you're talking about with your family,
mm-hmm.
like it happened to your dad. So there's something that he can share with you.
Yeah.
And then you've seen your child experience
mm-hmm.
grief. So now there's something you can help him with and help other people with too.
Yeah.
But what were like some of the hardships with dating again after that? Because I imagine that it was, you know, pretty traumatizing for you to experience that and then try to get yourself back out into the dating world.
Yeah, so this all happened, I kind of keep track by how old Jaylen is. So it's happened when he was in kindergarten. So I didn't date for a very long time because I was scared. There's that fear like, oh, it's going to happen again, or somebody's going to hear about what happened. They're not going to like you because they think it's your fault. Like there's a lot of that guilt that's just like internal. And so I didn't date for... I told myself, like, for my grieving process, I wasn't going to date for a year. And then with that, God was like, no, you need longer. And so it was about 5 or 6 years until I started, like, really dating again. And I remember I had a conversation with Jaylen, and I was like, hey, Jaylen, I'm thinking about starting dating again. And he was like, why? And I was like, what you mean, why? I was like, I want to get married and, you know, like, have a family and not all that stuff. He was like, I know. And so it took me a long time to really be like, Jaylen, why not? And he was like, I don't want you to date someone who's going to leave. And I was like, what do you mean by leave? He was like, you dated Mike and he died and he left. And I was like, Jaylen, like, no, like that's not how that works, baby. Like, I'm not gonna, that's not gonna happen. And so like I was very cautious as to who I dated, why I dated them, and I'm purposed in my heart not to let any of them meet Jaylen until I knew for sure like it was someone who was gonna be there like for the long run. And I didn't. So Jaylen's in 7th grade, he's going to 8th, but he didn't meet my now husband until for 7 years, almost 6 or 7 years. He didn't meet him. And I had met him, I'd known him for 3 years. So that whole first year, like we were just getting to know each other, just kind of talking, dating. We were friends. And then he ended up asking me out. He was like, hey, do you want to date me with the intent of seeing where this goes if it leads towards marriage? And I was like, okay. But he still didn't meet Jaylen yet. And we weren't gonna let them meet for like a couple of months. But there was an issue to where our house flooded to where I needed him to come. I was like, hey, the house just flooded. Can you come over? I was like, is there someone you can help me? And he was like, oh, I have a shop vac. And I was like, well, Jaylen's here, so I can just come pick it up. He was like, no, I'll come. It's not a big deal. I was like, but we weren't planning on you meeting Jaylen, for a couple months. And he was like, no, it's fine. And so he ended up meeting Jaylen due to, the house flooding. And ever since then, like they've been pretty close. So he would come over and hang out with us and just kind of get to know Jaylen. And his aspect was, I'm not his dad, I'm just going to be there to be his friend, just kind of just hang out with him, just get to know him, and just for him to know that, I love you and, I want this, to go in the long run. So. Yeah. And I think him taking his time with Jaylen and just kind of just listening to Jaylen and just kind of being there helped, ease Jaylen into everything going on.
Yeah. I think it speaks a lot to like your parenting, that you took it so seriously, that you really were trying to protect Jaylen in the long run. I think that speaks like really highly of you and your integrity as a mom. And and just like protecting your child, you guys went through something really traumatic, and he was in kindergarten when it happened. So there's a lot of like developing that his brain had to do around this trauma, you know? And so I just think it speaks really highly of you as a mom. You had known Chris for 3 years. So when you met him, or before you met him, what were some things that you did to kind of prepare yourself for your next relationship?
So I've always, heard like in different preaching and messages, they say like, if you want something, write it down. So whether that's like a job or a dream or just anything you want, write it down. And then even in the Bible, it says, write it down, make it plain in tablets, So I wrote down what I wanted in a man. And I did that for Mike as well. Like before I started dating Mike, I was like, okay, that's what I want, him to be Christian. I want him to be tall. I want him to be this. Like I wrote it down like specifically. And so the fact that God gave me Mike kind of gave me solace that if like Mike's not the only person in the world like this, so if God gave me Mike, there's gotta be a man who will love me like he did. Like there's gotta be a man who loved Christ, who can love me, who can love my son, who can, provide for us, who can be there for us, emotionally. Like there's gotta be another man or something, there. And so I wrote down my list, and like I said, God gave me Mike. So I did it again. When I started dating again, I was like, I wrote it down. Like, this is what I want. This is what I want. And every person I dated, they had something on that list. But after talking to them for a while, I'm like, no, like you're not the one. You're not the one. And then I met Chris, and I was like, wow, like he's got like a lot of these checked. Like, goodness gracious, like what's up? And then one thing about it is, fun fact, is that even though we went out on dates, we didn't really date until, like I said, a year later, because unbeknownst to us, sometimes we're like, oh, I'm ready. We weren't ready. Like we weren't ready for each other at that time. And we didn't know. And like, we wanted to like, I don't know, he didn't, but I wanted to be like, oh, you check all my boxes. Like you the one, let's go. And it was like, I was like, nah, not yet. And so something that Chris would always tell me, he was like, I'm looking for a sign. I want God to really show me that, you're the person that, is for me, he's going to show me. And something I learned is just like, it's in God's timing. Everything is in his timing, because like I said, had we dated then, we would have had a lot of issues. We would have had some unresolved things that we had to go through, and it would have been harder. And we may have like just broken up and just not have worked. But just that waiting. And, God tells us that we do need to wait, and I know we live in this instant gratification realm right now where we want something, we get it, we buy it, whatever. But sometimes like the good things are worth waiting for. And you have to, you have to make sure that God really works on your heart so you can be ready to receive what he has for you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's awesome. So, with the relationship that Chris has with Jaylen and Chris has with you, not that it would be easier, but sometimes if you have like a bad breakup with like a crazy ex-boyfriend and then you get in another relationship, it's like a little bit different than you had a great relationship with Mike and he was this great man, and so it's like stepping into a new relationship. So how did that affect your relationship with Chris?
When I first started talking to Chris, I was very open. Like it was interesting because I always thought, to not really tell him all the details. But with Chris, I felt very open. I felt like I could share with him the details of what happened. And when I did, he just received it. And he was like, I understand. I get it. And that was just such a piece because, I felt that I was able to open up to him and he didn't take it the wrong way. He loved us in spite of what we've been through. And that was very comforting.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And a lot of times, even now, even though we're married, I still deal with Mike was like this. You're like this. Oh, y'all are similar like this. Oh, wait, I can't say it out loud. Or or we're driving down the street and I'll remember, something that I did with Mike and I'm like, oh, da 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 da. And I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Just kind of just being aware and just kind of watching, because I don't want him to ever feel like he's competing,
right,
with someone who's not even here anymore. But at the same time, like, he's like, well, you have memories and you have moments that, I would like for you to share them with me. So there's that balance of what's appropriate, I guess, or not. But he's been definitely, like I said, when I said he accepted everything, I told him what happened. I told him like where it happened. And on his way to like one of his relatives' houses, he we passed by the site that the accident happened. One thing is that Mike was actually buried in Ohio, and I wasn't able to make his funeral because at that time I couldn't walk. So I wasn't able to see him buried. I wasn't able to have that closure. So what I did was I put a marker across, on that spot that we had the accident. And every, couple of months or so, I'll go and put flowers on it. And so one day we were passing by and I was like, oh, I need to put some new flowers on it. But I kind of just said it in passing. And then, the next week, we went back that way again. And he was like, hey, let's stop at the store. And I was like, why? He was like, to get some flowers. I'm like, for what? And he was like, you said you wanted to put new flowers out for Mike. And I was like, wait, what? Like, yeah, I said that in passing. He was like, no, but let's go do it. And so we went and we got flowers. Jaylen was with me and, he took us to the spot and, he was there. And never in my wildest dreams would I have ever thought that a man would do something like that. For him to be like, I know you love this man. Like, I know you love him and I know you didn't have that closure. But I understand. And I'm gonna, support you and I'm gonna hold you and I'm gonna love you, even though you've been through that. And like, that was just such, like, so comforting. Just in, for him to do that for Jaylen and I. Yeah. For him to like truly listen and just be like, I want to do that for them. Yeah. And so even now, like, so that was like a couple of months ago. And so, it's been a few months since the flowers have been out. He asked me, he was like, are you ready to put some more flowers out? Those are looking kind of old. Let's go to the store and get some more. Like, for him to do that, it's just so, it's mind boggling. Yeah. But, it's God. I believe that God, he has, people for us and he also edges into their heart like, hey, you should do this, and and they listen and he's a blessing. Yeah.
When you were like going through grief share and the counseling plus being a single mom at the time, did you ever feel like you would never find anybody like Mike or like Chris?
Absolutely. Like, being a single mom, I was like, oh, nobody wants a girl with kids, especially in the church, you're like, oh yeah, they want someone who's like, super pure and, they don't have a spot of sin on them. That's who those church boys want. And so like, I was always, boggled down with that fear and anxiety, like, oh, nobody's going to want me. And then one day Jaylen was at a birthday party and there was this lady there. And she had 2 kids, and I was just sitting down talking to her, and she was like, yeah, I'm getting married and such and such. And I was like, oh, okay. And she was like, but these aren't his kids. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, oh, yeah, like, I had these 2 kids from somebody else, and, this other man, you were going to marry this other man. And I'm like, wait, what? And I was like, if God can do it for you, he can do it for me. And then I just started walking in that, and I was like, you got 2 kids from like 2 other people, and a man still wants you, and he's going to take you and then your kids and as his own. I was like, oh yeah, like, and I just started like believing that and trusting it, and like, and that's where that faith comes from. Is like, I'm gonna see this. Like, this is what I want to see. I like, God, you did it for this person. I know that you'll make a way for me, and and trusting. It took a while. Like, it wasn't immediate. It wasn't something. And I know a lot of times, like I said, like, we want things to happen immediately, but it took a lot of work. It took a lot of work in me. It took a lot of work, in my faith and my relationship with Christ in order to get there and to be ready for that. But it happened. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Talking about the work that it took with your relationship with Christ, how did all of this affect your relationship with him?
Going through it, like when it first happened, like I said, I did not want to, like, God, no. Like, it was hard. It was so hard, but my parents brought me to church every Sunday. they were like, you're gonna go. And I was like, I can't go to church. I don't feel well. I want to stay in the bed. And they're like, no, you're going to Sunday. You're going to go to church. You're going to come. And I was like, but my face is swollen and, my arm is, I can barely walk. No, you're going to go. And it was hard because like sometimes, a lot of the times I was feeling like I was just there. Like there was no relationship. It was just there. And I felt just so angry at that time and just downtrodden. And like, I just didn't understand at all. Like, God, like you took them away. I was so angry. And my walk, it was a struggle, but just having those people there who are strong in Christ, encouraging you and just kind of being there. Earlier, you said that when your grandfather died, you was like, people would ask you, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? And I found out that like people couldn't really do, like they couldn't give me anything like physical, but what helped me the most was just, they would just spend time with me. Mm-hmm. Like not talking, but just time. There was one person who we would go on, she'll just be like, hey, what you doing? And I'm just like, oh, nothing. And she was like, you want to go on a walk? And I was like, not really. She's like, let's go on a walk. And then we'll just go on the walk. And then like, as we were walking, just a quiet walk. And sometimes I would just start sharing just how I felt. And then she would just listen. And that was probably the most therapeutic thing that anyone at that time could do. Like no money, no food, like just listen and just hear me. Because for a while, like I said, I was depressed. It was low. And sometimes I felt like all I was talking about was Mike and his death. But it needed to be said. Mm-hmm. Like I needed to get all of that out so God can start working again in me. And after after doing those walks with her like weekly, I began to like just open up to more people. And, I joined like a small group for like young adults my age. And then I also joined another small group that was for like, it was adults, at that time, adults, grown-ups, because I had a kid. And so, they had kids and families. So I had joined that small group too. And then, I started serving more intently in Kid Pack. And that just having those people around you, just like I said, just speaking in, having people around you, speaking into you, speaking life into you is so important because it helps build you up. It helps build your faith. It helps you get out of that rut. Like it just like I feel personally that just is just so important to have that around you because without them, I would still be depressed. Who knows where I would be without those people just constantly speaking the word and just encouraging and just listening to, just me ramble. Yeah.
So with everything that you've gone through with being a single mom and losing so much potential in a relationship with someone and then kind of being on the other side of it now, being married to a wonderful man that treats you really well, treats Jaylen really well, what would you say to somebody watching this that might be going through something very similar to you? How would you encourage them to get them through what they're going through right now?
I would say, like, even when it's tough, just keep your faith because this is just a moment in the big picture. Like, looking back, I'm like, oh, that was 7 years ago. But look how much I've grown from there. And that God, He has a plan. And we don't see it and we don't understand it, but He has a plan for us. And that's what I would say is just keep that faith. And the thing about faith is that you don't know it. It's blind. Like you're going to be blind about it, but you have to trust God. And so like everybody quotes the scripture and it's Jeremiah 29, 11, for I know the plans I have for you, declared the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope in the future. And God gives us that hope. Like you have to hold on to that hope that this is not over. This is not the end. This valley is not it. Like there are mountains and mountains and mountains that God has for you. And like they're for you. Your name's on them. They're not for nobody else. They're for you. And that you have to receive that. And that's the only way that you can get out. And like his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Like we can't even comprehend the good. Because right now, like we're focused on like, focus on the bad. This happened, this happened, this happened. But because this happened, look at what God can do. He can heal others and, just by your words or your testimony, And so, yeah, like he gives us that hope. That's what I would say to someone is that like, you got to keep trusting. And though it looks so dark and though like you feel so low that it's, in due time, it'll pass.
Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of the Dare to Love podcast. I hope it blessed you and challenged you. Make sure you visit the description below for all our helpful links. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new content from us. And follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook so you can stay updated with everything we have going on. And we'll see you next week for an all-new episode of the Dare to Love podcast.